Okay, welcome everybody to episode 3 of the V8ESC Backfire podcast. Apologies, we should have done this last weekend, but Sam was away racing in his endurance league, and Johnny was away maggot drowning, as I call it. Other people know it as fishing. But you're back with me again, Clyde Whiting. With me, I have two past champions, Johnny Brandon.
Evening.
And Mr. Tony Kloosterman.
Hi, everyone.
And our silent Stig doing all the wizardry in the background is Mr. Sam Boozin. And we don't let him talk, by the way, because you wouldn't understand him. So, guys, we're obviously a week late on doing our podcast. But first of all, as usual, we're going to take a look back on round 6 from Daytona, which I know a lot of people don't like Daytona, but we always manage to have good racing, good tactics, and there's usually a spanner thrown in the works for a few drivers. You guys had your troubles, but what do you think of Daytona, and how did the race go from your perspective?
Well, I was pleased to see a big entry for the event. I think we had 29 cars, which was really good. I'm not a big fan of Daytona, but managed to have some reasonable pace until I self-induced a spin near the end there. But overall, it was very good. I think the driving standards were up this week compared to the previous few weeks, and there was considerably less or no bitching going on. So that was nice to see.
Johnny, how did it go from your perspective? I know you obviously had some troubles in the race.
Yeah, first of all, did I tell you how big the fish was? I caught this. No, jokes aside. Yeah, Daytona was good. Yeah, had a bit of a, trying to think back and remember, had a pit bug. So went into the pits. My fuel stop, it was all set up. Pulled into the pit bay. Car went up. Changed the tyres and no fuel was going in the car. Put the car back down again. Lollipop man lifted the lollipop and still no fuel in the car. Figured it out what was going unchecked. It had been unchecked, so checked the fuel box. I had to sit there and wait for them to then start putting the fuel in. It cost me loads of time. I mean, that last stop, I don't know what anybody else needed to put in, but I was putting in just over 17 gallons, which I don't think was a lot because I've been saving fuel from the start of the race. I mean, that first stint we pitted early on lap 17, but that was literally just on the half hour. I had another 3 laps of fuel left in the car at that point. So, yeah, really disappointed. Foggy also had a similar pit drama in his first stop, and it unchecked his tyres. So we had the opposite thing. So it unchecked Foggy's tyres in the first stop. So yeah, that's why he lost the time. And then it unchecked my fuel in the second stop. So a bit unlucky as a team, really. But apart from that, it was a great race. Driving standards, as Tony said, looked good. The racing was great at the front. Everyone was being patient. I don't remember any contact whatsoever, really, amongst the first 6 guys. So yeah, it was a good race.
Yeah, I must admit, I although I don't particularly get very good results at Daytona, I do enjoy driving the track because it's one of those tracks where you can have a rest during a lap when you get onto the oval section. It's not constantly on the go all the time. Do you think that helps with the driving standards? You know, the fact that there is that nice easy oval section on the track.
Probably, yeah, because you, like I said, you're just saving. The only way you pull away from somebody, I don't know if Tony agrees, but the only, I'm sure he does, but the only way you can pull away is if you're a second a lap faster. If you're not
pretty much
a second a lap faster than somebody, you got no chance. So it's absolutely pointless.
I mean, I was in the lead for the first 16 laps. I was lifting and coasting from before the finish line, and nobody was going past me. Nobody wanted to lead the race. It just everybody was saving fuel everywhere. yeah, that is just a fuel-saving race, and therefore it's patience. Nobody wants to overtake the guy in front. They just want to sit there saving fuel. And yeah, for sure, everyone's a lot more. Patience is the aim. The most patient person wins at Daytona. It's all about the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, Michael did a good job again, and he likes these fuel-saving races. He's an expert at doing it, and it proved once again that just in his
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it would have been. It's easy for me to sit here and say I think I'd have been there with him. I did speak to him, and it sounds like I was taking less fuel than he was in the finals did, but it didn't happen for whatever reason. So he deserved to win. Well played to him. George did well as well, because I think George was putting him under pressure at the.
Yeah, Mike always seems to whenever there's tactics involved in a race, and like you say, fuel saving as well. But even just the tactical races, Mike seems to do something different to what everybody else does, and 9 times out of 10 it pays off. Now, you two guys, with your respective teams that always do well in this championship, is that something that you're going to look at? Obviously I'm sort of privileged that I get to know the NQR tactics and things like that, but Mike just does it different, and it seems to work. Does he know something that nobody else knows?
I think it's part of driving the car. I mean, last season it killed. The fuel usage is what destroyed me. I could lead races and be up there with Nickel, but as soon as we pitted, I was in the pits 3 seconds longer because I'm taking more fuel. So I've really tried to focus on that fuel saving side of it, and I think Michael Taliancic, obviously racing in Scops, the races generally are pretty long races, with pit stops included, and it's all about the shortest pit stops and fuel conservation and being smart. I think he's very well practiced at that, and he knows exactly what he's doing. I don't know why I use so much fuel, but I literally last season in all the feature races I'm using 3 gallons more fuel than Foggy and Rich, and I have no idea why. So I'm really trying to.
It's because you get too much power.
Cut that down. Yeah, I've got the super engine in the car. That's the difference. No, we can't work it out. We've looked at high speed and all sorts, and it's bizarre. So yeah, I use a lot more fuel, so I'm trying to cut that out. But it's easier said than done,
Yeah, it sure is. I think Michael, in any of the long races or races where fuel is a critical factor, he just excels. So, hats off to him. He does a good job at it. It's something that I can't do. I'm similar to Johnny, I think, in a lot of ways. We use that much more gas than some of the other guys. So it's hard to save, and I've worked at it a little bit, but generally I give up.
The trouble for me is I can save fuel really easily. The problem is to not lose 7 seconds a lap in doing so.
There you go.
It's always a hard one, whether you fuel save or not. I suppose Daytona, the worst place to be is in first. I think it was Daytona, I don't know if it was last season or the season before. I sat down with talking to Pete Bingham, worked out all the fuel figures and said to him, look, this is definitely a fuel saving race. This is our lap time that we need to run to every single lap, and we'll do one less stop to everybody else. And I think we got lapped about 4 times.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise doing it on lap times. I think you just got to do it in comparison to the cars around you, where you can do it, where you can't do it. And I mean, that's what I was doing. At the end, I was leading for most of the first stint. I'd say, if it was 17 laps, 18 laps the first stint, I reckon I was probably leading 15 of those, or 14 of those at least. 8 laps.
Yeah, must be like the size of that fish you caught.
Okay, I thought I was leading more than that. But I ended up saving more fuel. I had more fuel left than Foggy did at the end of the first stint. So it wasn't okay, but that just shows you what the pace was. Nobody wanted to lead. Everybody was just saving fuel.
You'll have another opportunity next week, Johnny. If you can save 3 gallons in the second race, you might make it on no stops.
Yeah, no. If I can save 3 gallons, I might have the same pit stop as Foggy. But that's I use way too much fuel, and I haven't even done a lap round Phillip Island yet. So
Mike will be doing it on 0 stops then, I reckon.
Yeah, well, you could. 3.5 gallons is a fair amount in a 40-minute race, but it's possible.
Okay, so obviously we had Mike Taliancic was the winner, George second, and Johnny scraped into the podium places in third. Moving forwards, Phillip Island. Now we had the sprint series there last night, and as Tony rightly said, if you can do some fuel saving round there, then you could possibly cut out your pit stop in the feature race. From doing the broadcast, it just seemed an absolute nightmare to overtake anybody, compared with Daytona, where you could pass people with ease by just getting a good run out of the bus stop and outbraking them into turn 1 if you hadn't already got past them on the oval section.
Yeah, Phillip Island, there actually is 3 or 4 passing spots, but it requires some cooperation to get by. So, if someone vigorously defends the inside, then you have to maybe try and find a way around on the outside.
Yeah, okay. So, before we go into Phillip Island in too much detail, because that's later on in the show, it's time for me to put you guys on the spot again, and give me your driver of the race for Daytona.
So I have 2. I think Michael, obviously winning the race did very well and saving the fuel. But I want to give some recognition to Harold Stadler. He started 25th in the race and ended up in the 6th position after starting all the way at the back, and did a good.
Yeah, and I think with Harold as well, he didn't even mean to start at the back. I think he just couldn't get a clean lap in qualifying.
Well, he did a good job.
Why he was at the back.
And he did it with only having 5 incident points as well for an endurance race, which was pretty good.
So he couldn't get a clean lap in quality, but he did an hour and a half endurance and only got 5 exits.
Yeah, it's weird how that happens, isn't it? Come on then, Johnny. Who's your driver of the race?
I'm trying to think through. Probably George. I think George did really well. He was really patient. And to be so close to Taliancic at the end, his strategy was obviously good. I think from memory, he was putting Michael under a bit of pressure at the end. So yeah, I'll go for George.
Okay, well, for once in the podcast, I'm going to agree with Tony, and I'm going to go for Harold. 25th to 6th. I know the track helps. I know the endurance races help, but he's going to get my vote as well. So well done, Harold. So we sort of covered the driving standards, which we all believe was a lot better. Not that we get that many problems, but we did have a bad race. And there wasn't a lot of post-race bitching, which is good. Apart from Jamie Mack, who's just constantly abusing me now, which is great. Looking at the standings, guys, Johnny, you've got a 29-point lead over your teammate. What are you guys doing? Are you trying to take it in turns to win the championship?
That would be nice. I'll suggest that to Nickel and see what he says. No, we just, the only rule we've got is we don't take each other out. And it's not a rule, it's an agreement. We don't want to take each other out. So how it plays out up to there after that is what it is. Really, we just see how it plays out. Like I said before, you need some luck, and we'll see where we're at towards the end of the season. Hopefully, we're both up there, and it's a problem, and we both go for it at the end. But yeah, we're both allowed to do whatever we want to do. Like I say, the only thing is we don't want to take each other out. So.
Well, that's usually a good starting point. So, so obviously Nicole's in second. George got a good points haul at Daytona and is currently in third. Tony, you're being beaten by your teammate Chris Jackson at the moment. You're both sitting fourth and fifth.
Yeah, well, if you take a look at the points with the drop score, Michael Talianich is up there as well with 800 points. So, and Victor's with 760. Yeah, it's early in the season, but the way things are going and with the number of improved drivers this year, I think I'll just be fighting for a top 10 at the end of.
Okay, so moving on to the club championship. Gary Croft, who won it last season, has got a commanding lead at the moment over Woodward and myself. Unfortunately, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how Gary looks at it, he's still in the club championship with us because he hasn't had a top 5 finish in a 20-plus car grid in the last 3 seasons. But I think the way Gary's going this season, if he hasn't already done that, I'm sure he will do. The team championship. So we've got the usual contenders there at the top. So Johnny, your team up the top. Tony, your team is second, and Fitzsty, especially with Harold, and also what's his name, Johnny? I forgot. George. That's it.
George.
Sorry, George. They're pushing you two all the way by the looks of it. Is the team championship something that you guys concentrate on, or are you solely interested in the self glory of the main championship?
Well, from our team's perspective, we'd like to see us our team at the top, and we think that we may have a chance. Although the XVR guys are a couple of 100 points ahead of us right now, so we'll have to see how the balance of the year plays out.
Yeah, same with us really. The team's just as important. Obviously, the drivers want to win the drivers' title, but if we get the drivers doing well, then the team does well, and it's always nice to win the team title. So I'd say it's probably just as important.
And then moving on to the Fred Bingham Forever Forward Award. No surprising really that Victor Tanaka's at the top there. He's just looking at it in 18 positions in round 2, 22 in round 4, 14 in round 5. He keeps
crashing out of race 1 and starting at the back of race 2, doesn't he?
That's it, yeah. And to be honest, that gives, I had a chat. I won't mention any names, but I did have a chat when we first started this part of the championship with one of the faster guys who told me that it was unfair because they always qualified well in race 1 and therefore didn't get a chance to make up any positions. To which I answered, well, you can't win everything. And in race 2 with the reverse grid, it means you've got more opportunities than anybody else to make the passes. So it is one of those, little mini championships that, anybody could win. Just looking at it, Ronald Moons is sat in 5th place.
Yeah, I think one of the top 10 drivers have got an advantage over everybody else, generally speaking, because you're going to be starting the second race behind at least 10 cars, if not 20 cars, that theoretically you're faster than. So as long as you don't crash, you're going to gain the places. So yeah, I think the top 10 have got an advantage over the second 10, if you like. As far as that's concerned, it'll be one of the top 10 guys that wins it. But you still got to get the job done, get through cleanly. It's not easy. So fair play to Tanaka, Victor. You still got to get it done, all jokes aside.
Yeah, and obviously as well, we're the bigger the grids, the harder it is for the fast guys to get through, or the longer it takes them. So we're having some fairly decent grids this season. So let's hope it continues, and it'd be interesting to see how that one plays out at the end. Just having a quick look at the Safe Driver Award as well. At the moment, the guys in first, second, and third have only done a couple of races. So, unless they do quite a few more, they're not going to be in the reckoning. So at the moment, it looks like, Johnny, you are, sort of favourite at the moment. Less than 4 incidents per race. That I suppose, race one qualifying, pole, second. Helps you get no incidents, but it still takes some doing to get through all that traffic in race two without banging your car about.
Yeah, and generally I try and keep the incidents to a minimum, because obviously there's points at stake for that. So, yeah, not easy, but try and keep it as clean as possible. I've had decent pace as well without blowing my own trumpet. So when you've got decent pace, it's a lot easier to take it a bit easier and stay away from those limits. So yeah, we see a long way to go.
Yeah, most definitely. We're only just started the season, really. So our guest driver tonight is Mr. Bill Switzer. He won't mind me saying the oldest driver in the league, I believe. And he's that whole old, he's actually forgot at the moment that he's coming in. So what we'll do is we'll move on to the Phillip Island proper preview. And then when we see Bill, we'll get him dragged in. So as I started to say earlier, from watching the broadcast last night, it seems, especially Harold, you put your car in the right place. It's very, very difficult to get past anybody. You most of the passing was done with people a good run out of the final turn and then out dragging somebody into turn one. Have you guys got any tips or tricks that you can let the viewers know on other overtaking opportunities at Phillip Island?
Well, I think you mentioned turn one, but turn two, sometimes some of the drivers slide out a little bit there. There's an opportunity to get in the inside there, and that's a hairpin. If you can break your opponent, and you can do it on either the inside or the outside. I've seen it done both ways. I say those are the best passing opportunities on the track.
Yeah, I think Harold, just going to what we spoke about in the last podcast, I think it was like a perfect example of how to defend properly. He took the inside line very, very early, and it cancelled out any attempts. So there was just no way people could do dive bombs or late moves, because there was nowhere to do a late move too. He just did a perfect defensive class. So yeah, fair play to him. Whether that was right or wrong, because from what I've seen of the race, looked like he cost himself a fair bit of time by doing it. So yeah, it's debatable whether it was the right thing to do for the whole race or not. But what he did do, he did it very well.
Yeah, and just going back to turn one, it seemed as though people were getting a run down the start finish straight, throwing it up the inside, but there seemed to be a hell of a lot of grip around the outside of turn one, which then put you on the inside for turn two, and the defence was done, and the car trying to do the overtake was just had to fall in line. So you're right. Harold did a hell of a job with his defence, but anybody that's going to be racing with us on Saturday night, it's certainly worth watching the broadcast from last night and watching Harold, just to see where he was positioning his car and just how difficult it made overtaking, getting past Harold. For all three races, he managed to defend well.
Yeah, he did a great job defending, and as I said, he made the car very wide, and we, maybe next weekend people won't be as patient with him.
Yeah, that's always true. Yeah, there's always the push to pass, as should we call it. So Phillip Island.
Also, I think there's a right time. Just to say, I think there's a right time and a wrong time, arguably, to do it the whole race long. But you pay a price for doing that in lap time. So he was pretty slow because he was defending so much. So it's balancing out how much time you're prepared to lose. Obviously, he was in second place, I think, if I remember rightly, from the one I saw in race 2. So arguably, it was worth him doing it. But you do pay a price for it if you're defending as much as he was. So, and as Tony says, whether everybody's as patient, you got no choice but to be patient, really, because you can't just punt him out of the way. You got to try and find something around the outside somewhere, which is easier said than done. But I think turn one, from what I've seen, looks like it is possible on the inside and it is possible on the outside. So if somebody's really defending, it's probably going to be turn one way or the other. But yeah, perfect defending from Harold, and as I say, it's a fine line. If you want to do that much, there's a price to pay for it in lap time. So it's working out when to do it and when not to do it, really.
Yeah, and I think, as usual, sprint race with a qualifying session is going to be really, really important for you fast guys up the front. I know you guys know how to get the car around the track in the quickest possible time, but you guys are also very good at defending. So I would expect whoever gets the pole position to probably go on and win race one. Would you agree?
That's the plan.
I love it.
And then in race 2, which I think is going to be fascinating because, we've just said that, overtaking is limited, shall we say, at Phillip Islands. Hopefully, Marco gets his finger out and gives us a nice big reverse grid. And it's not going to be easy for you guys to come through if we're getting a 25 plus car grid.
Are they not all big reverse grids now on that wheel?
No, there are some smaller ones. It's just, I think last season with the old wheel and Marco pressing the button, we just seemed to get 6 every week. And this season, we seem to be getting 23 every week. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I think the smallest. I might be wrong, but I think because I don't normally watch that on the broadcast, but I think the smallest I saw on there, the smallest possible, was about 15 or 14.
I think it's 12, but yeah. 12 is still,
which is good.
That's a decent size. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we did make a change just to sort of liven it up a bit. And,
I like it.
Obviously,
yeah, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, we also had the Evdoka boozing gate scandal of last season, so that's why the wheel changed as well for that. So race 2, how patient are you guys going to be? Or are we going to see the push to pass, or would you rather not say?
I won't be doing any push to pass.
Then you won't be using all your gas.
You can't push to pass, can you now? Let's not have a row about it. But you can't push to pass. I don't like. Foggy's. I speak for Foggy on this as well. We're the same. You don't want to do it like that. So that's no good for me. So there'd be no push to pass unless it's Tony. Then it might be. But no, there'd be no push to pass. We're not about that with XVR. Not deliberately anyway. If it does happen, they'll be giving the place back. Bit of side by side tapping and that's fine. But it doesn't take much. A little tap up the back, and you overshoot, and you're in all sorts of trouble in this car. So it's questionable, my opinion.
So what do you guys think then to a possible brand new race winner for race 2?
Terrible idea. Don't like it.
I think that we can see a new race winner. As I said earlier, we've probably got 10 guys fought. And with our new recruit to the series yesterday, Marco Nurmela, showing some decent pace, he could be marked for a win as early as next week as well.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, Johnny hasn't really had much of a chance to watch the racing from last night, but there wasn't many cars on the grid. But Marco, I don't know. He just seemed to be on the pace right from the start. It's that Finnish blood thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I've either raced with it. I know the name from somewhere. I think World GT or Formula 3, or maybe all of them. I can't remember, but I know he's a quick guy.
Victor Tanaka will be on the chat any second now, saying it's all to do with his coaching, no doubt.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Victor may have provided a baseline set from NQR for him.
Will he be getting that for next week? Well, it's the same track next week. Will he be getting that for the week afterwards? Not if he wins next week, he'll be on his own.
Yeah, he's pretty much punted out the door now.
So, another question about Phillip Island, and something that we got into a little bit last night in the broadcast, and this is for you, Tony, more than anybody else. Chris Jackson seems to be the Phillip Island specialist. I think he's had more wins there in the series than any other track.
Hasn't he only had 2 wins in the series, and both have been at Phillip Island?
So it is something like that, yeah. And we know, obviously, Chris wasn't there last night because he was preparing for his son's birthday party and earning brownie points. With Chris being so good round Phillip Island, do you take hints and tips from Chris, Tony, or do you just say, look, I'm my own man, I'm going to do my own thing, and if Chris wins again, perhaps I'll ask him next time?
Yeah, Chris and I pretty much have the same setup when we're racing at most tracks, other than just slight change in brake bias or tire pressure. But Chris has a tremendous amount of confidence around this track. He, it's like me and Oulton Park. Chris and Phillip Island seem to marry up quite well, and I just think that added confidence really helps him here.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Just looking at the drivers in the top 10 that haven't had a win yet, obviously there's Chris and George. I think Harold is definitely going to win a race this season. Rich Warmingham and Gary Croft are definitely due a win at some point. Not Not so sure about Ronald. Sorry, Ronald. I know I am your one and only member of the Racing in Socks Ronald Moon's Appreciation Society, but I'm not sure you're going to get a win, if I'm honest, unless you do a JP and get a decent reverse grid in a sprint race 3. Maybe you'll get a win that way. But if I was the better man, I would definitely have Chris down for a win at some point next weekend. And probably a good points haul as well, and a good points haul for the team. Maybe if Chris has got some backup from Tony and Victor, then the team scores might close up a bit. What do you think?
Yeah, it's entirely possible. I think, like you say, Chris just does very, very well here, and we'll see how that goes. George McClay is going to win a race for sure this year, and more than one, I would suspect. Harold's got an opportunity as well. He makes that car wide enough, and he can eke one out. We'll see how that goes over the longer races, though. It's easier to do in a sprint race than it is to do it for a 40-minute or a 90-minute race for sure.
Yeah, totally agree. So that'll be Phillip Island. That'll be next weekend. Let's pack the grid. Let's get some decent racing in again. I see Mr. Bill Switzer has now turned up in the interview room, so I'm going to drag him up and we'll have a chat with Bill about racing. And I know Bill's got some fantastic stories as well if we get him talking for a little while. So here we go. Bill Switzer, welcome to the podcast.
Well, good evening, gentlemen. How are you all?
Yeah, we're all good. Glad to see you've woken up from your nap. We've just done a little bit on Phillip Island. I know you was involved in the broadcast last night, so you see everything that was going on. But first of all, what we'd like to talk about is Bill. So you've been with the league right from the start. Probably not raced in as many races as you'd like to, but you do a lot of traveling over there in the colonies. From your perspective, what's good, what's bad, what do we do right, what do we need to improve on? Take it away.
Well, I tell you, when I first started in iRacing, I was doing official races and not doing very well, and tanked my I rating. My safety rating was great, but I rating was really in the bucket. So I kind of searched around, didn't really like what I was racing, and found you guys. I really like the V8 supercar concept. I've always watched the real guys on television, and I just think it's a great combination of vehicle. I was very surprised when I started attempting to drive it how difficult it was. I think that's what makes it really fun, is it's difficult to drive. And even though I'm a tail gunner in the back and not performing very well, it's really a hoot, and this is the best league going.
Yeah, thanks for that. Obviously, I'm definitely not going to disagree with you. Now, you've got a wealth of experience from racetracks around the world, from marshalling and everything else that you've done. Just thinking about your experience in this league, and being a tail gunner, as you call it. We're looking into things at the moment like the driver development program and that sort of thing. Is there anything that hasn't been suggested that you think would help the guys at the back, apart from putting a ton of ballast into the fast guys?
Well, I think it's a great idea that you're developing a program to help people that don't quite have the knack of driving this the way it's to be driven. I've sought help from paying people on the internet to help me a little bit. I've done a few hours with various people, and I'll tell you, it helps somewhat. But I think really the thing that needs to be done is you've got to have like you got to learn racecraft. You got to run in groups. You have to practicing out there by yourself, somebody telling you to brake a little bit earlier and get on the gas now and all that. It's helpful, but it's not the same as fender to fender, a guy in back of you harassing you or attempting to pass somebody. Those are the kind of things I think you really need to learn in this car, because it's a little different than trying to pass somebody in a GT car or an open wheel car or a NASCAR type car. So I think that's what's missing in any of these situations out there that you sign up for to improve your driving. That's the one thing that I do see that's missing.
Yeah, and you know, um, you're right what you're saying. The appeal of the car is it is difficult to drive, and it is always trying to kill you. It's not like jumping in, something with high downforce and ABS and everything else. Um, you've been with us from the start. You was part of the, as we call it, the Magnificent Nine that started everything off. The series has grown and shrunk and grown again. We've gone from a fairly basic broadcast to what Apex do for us now. We've gone through sponsors to pay for the broadcast, which have been drivers racing in the league. Now we've got Racetech on board. I obviously, in the back of my mind, I know where I want the league to go and how I think it will grow. But just from your perspective, Bill, where do you think we go? Where we've been going 3.5 years now. Where are we going to be year 5, year 6? Bearing in mind, this big esports thing is kicking off and everything else.
Well, I wish I brought my crystal ball with me. I don't have it, but I can tell you, I think you're headed in the right direction. Sadly, I'd like to see a better count in cars, and I think a lot of it is people get discouraged very quickly driving this car because somebody comes from another type of vehicle and does really well. I mean, you're stepping into a different animal, and to pick up the knack like the Tonys or the Johnnies in this league, it's a different ball game, and I just wish they'd hang around a little bit more. I guess maybe it's an ego, or maybe because you're the king of the kids in one league, you think you should be in every other league, and it does, or type of vehicle, and it doesn't always happen that way if you've driven a bunch of cars on this platform. So I really don't know. I hope it continues to go up. I mean, just the fact that you acquired Racetech as a sponsor, that tells me something. I mean, other than, you're good, that guy fairly well now, and he's a nice guy, it's all about money. And I don't think he would invest in something that he doesn't see worthwhile. And of course, he's from a country that races his car, so I think he's looking in that direction as well. But I think it's going up, and I think it'll get better. And it's going to be like a sine curve. You're going to be up and you're going to be down a little bit. It just happens.
Yeah, there's obviously something funny going on at the moment because I just seem to be agreeing with everybody rather than disagreeing with them. But something you touched on there about people not sticking around, myself and Dave handle all the sign-ups. And we see so many people sign up to the league, do one race, spin the car after 3 corners, and then you never see them again. It's one of those cars you've got to learn to drive it safely, and then hopefully the speed comes after that. Unfortunately for me, the speed just hasn't come yet, but when it does come, I should be winning every race, so I'm not worried. And like you say, with Racetech, they're a fantastic sponsor. We was very lucky to get them on board, but I do believe that there are a lot of companies in the motor racing industry at the moment looking at where motor racing in general is going, and esports at the moment just seems to have a massive explosion. You know, you've got Porsche involved. You know, you've everybody, every man and his dog is trying to get involved in it at the moment. And I think that the people that are getting in now are the ones that will benefit in the future. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I tell you, I was amazed to see the real life supercar teams picking up drivers from the Scope series over there. You know, they've gotten Josh Rogers and you know, a couple of the other guys, Ethan Greg Goult, and you know, that tells me that it's definitely progressing. And of course, you know, the podcast we've seen with Steve Letarte and Steve Myers and Dale Earnhardt Jr. Thank goodness he didn't get hurt in his plane wreck there the other day. But you know, these guys, I mean, I was just blown away at that podcast I watched with the three of those guys. Those guys are so into this; it was just shocking. And you know, being involved in this, it's got to make you feel good. You know, that's going in the right direction.
Yeah, most definitely. Tony, Johnny, anything you want to ask the old boy?
I want to know if he's going to race more regularly the balance of the year.
Well, I'm trying. Got a few medical issues and back and forth. I only have one rig, so to transport it 1,000 miles is a little difficult. But I'm working on that. I hope to race most of the races for the rest of the year. I may miss one or two, but I'm going to try for the. Believe me, I miss it.
Well, we miss you out on track, Bill. So, you know, hopefully, health-wise, things get better for you, and you know, we'll see you on track maybe next weekend.
Yep, I should be there. Thanks. And the health issues right now, I'm kind of you know, getting out of it, and hopefully. But that's the problem with getting old. Those things kind of hit you. So we're doing the best we can.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll just second what Tony says there. Hope it all works itself out, Bill, and thanks again. A little fact there, Bill's the guy that actually introduced me to this league, and he's responsible for me being here. So, thank you very much, Bill, and I look forward to seeing you back.
Johnny, don't let that get out. You're doing too well. But no, that's you know, you and I kind of bumped into each other. I don't know what it was, kind of like a practice or something. I think out at where was it, Bathurst, I believe, and you asked me the question, and I'm really glad you came along. Really, to be honest with you. But I appreciate you guys wanting me around. It gives you another car to pass too, which is a good thing. But maybe someday that might not happen as easily. Hopefully.
Yeah. So, sorry, Bill, that one just made me laugh.
No, that's okay. It's true, but you know, it's funny.
So you missed the race preview of Phillip Island, having your little nap. So just going to go on to a little section for me that we have, which is the league news. Now, we touched on some of these things in the last podcast. And when we was going through the standings, those of you that are eagle-eyed would have noticed that you was actually viewing something totally different from a Google spreadsheet that I spend hours and hours and hours on every Sunday morning. So we said there's a new website on the way. That was your sneak preview. As you can see, it's very, very clean, very fresh. Hopefully, just a better experience for you guys to be able to find things. Along with the new website, and in the background is our new scoring app, which I've been running alongside with the Google Sheet this season, and myself and Sam have ironed out a few problems. And everything seems to be working, but we're going to keep testing for the rest of this season, and we hope to launch the new website and the scoring app ready for season 8, which will begin in January. So that'll be a little Christmas present for everybody. And also, we announced a few weeks ago about our driver development program. and we touched on it a little bit earlier. The way we want to do this is we want to have a booking system, so that you guys can go on and request or see when the coaches are free, and request time with them. Obviously it's all going to be free of charge. These guys are giving up their time to help the slower guys out, and to help the league out, and to help the league grow. And at the moment, we've got Johnny and Tony that are there ready for us as built-in coaches. But we're hoping that we can get a few more on board in the European time zone, and then maybe a couple in the Australian time zone as well. Which will help the guys from down under. I know Mike T has been doing some work with Andrew Hoffman, which Andrew said is definitely paying off. Although we'll wait, and we'll have a verdict on that at the end of the season. But just to let you know, the booking app is almost complete. So we hope to get this section launched before the end of the season. Keep your eyes out, and as soon as it's ready to go, and we've tested it, we'll let you know, and you can start getting some one-to-one coaching with these fast guys that beat you every week.
Clyde, I have a suggestion for that, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Well, I don't know if you've ever seen these before and afters, but I could be the before guy, and Johnny and Tony could be the after. What do you think about?
Well, as in you teach people how not to do it, and then they teach them how to do it.
Exactly.
There you go. To book a session with Bill, then he's up for it.
I thought that's what we already had. I thought it was Tony first and then me.
There you go.
Oh boy.
Right, guys. So we're doing well on time for a change. iRacing news next. So something that's confusing me at the moment, and maybe Tony or Johnny or even Bill, you might know something a bit more. This V8 eSports series. Now, I've watched a draft where drivers were signing up to real life teams to run in this esports series. I've seen stuff on Facebook and other social media platforms where real teams are announcing how excited they are to be involved with it, and what drivers they've signed and stuff like that. But when does this start, and are we going to be using the same cars that we're using at the moment?
So my understanding of it is that we will be using the same cars. Starts in a couple of weeks. I did see the schedule, but it escapes me entirely as to when it does start. There is, unfortunately, a shortage of info series, and I just recently read that the people that are handling the series are getting out of the iRacing esports business after the series is over. So I'm hoping that the guys that run Scops maybe can handle the series for the supercars group, and maybe make it a proper series. Having 12 cars really is, it's kind of self-defeating. I think it would be a lot more interesting if you could have a full grid of 30 or 40 cars.
The Scops guys constantly run sort of 40, 50 cars, don't they?
Yeah,
Got a
they
great
do.
thing going on. And this esports thing was only open to Australians and New Zealand drivers, which they are actually the best in this cars at the moment, arguably. But there's a lot of people out there that, it's not encouraging Europeans, Americans to get involved in the car. by being
that's
this
the
included. You know,
unfortunate part.
if as soon as people, the Europeans, see there's an esports like F1 esports, it's a V8 esports, you get so many more Europeans. But then straight away, it's only open to Australians and New Zealanders. They're not interested. So they missed a
Yeah.
trick with that one, in my opinion. But
And they didn't even, some of the drivers were signed up before the qualifying or the draft even happened. So, instead of 12 spots, I think there was only 7 or 8 spots that were available. And I just think they could have done a better job.
I've seen a bit of that draft, and they've got the two best drivers in the same team as well, which seems a bit silly. So the two by far best drivers, the most successful drivers in Scops, they're both in the same team. It's all a bit anticlimactic.
You wouldn't be talking about Phil Sell and Rogers, would you?
Oh, whatever gave you that impression. Yeah, both in the same team. So congratulations to that team on their esports win.
Yeah.
Ooh, bitch.
I think they better job.
It's not bitchy. They are the best. They're gonna, but it's a bit of a silly thing to do, isn't it? You want to separate them and get a bit of competition into team. It's all about making it look similar to real work. You don't want the team cars disappearing at the front every race. All right, they'll be battling, I'm sure, but they could have spiced it up a little bit better, I think.
Yep.
So, with regard to the new cars, probably 4 to 6 weeks ago, through a friend of a friend who will remain nameless, I was told that they were pretty much ready to go. We also had the announcement from Loose Lips Gardner that the new cars, I believe he said, were coming, and there was going to be an announcement the following week, but that was probably 8 weeks ago. And since then, everything's gone quiet as far as I can see. Anybody else heard anything?
I asked 2 weeks ago, and I was told that there would be no update to the supercars for the next upcoming season, which is in 2 weeks. So I'll be very, very surprised if we see anything. I'm disappointed because, as you said, Clyde, they hinted quite strongly for a number of weeks that there would be something happening, and then with the esports series, I thought that would go hand in hand, but it doesn't sound like we're getting anything in the near future. If we do, I'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I've given up getting excited about things like that. I mean, the new tire model is supposed to be coming for the last 6 months, and new damage model. And I know it's all getting close, but with iRacing now, I mean, it's fantastic. I'm not moaning. I'm not complaining. I'm happy with what they got. But as far as new content's concerned, I'll wait for it to be announced that it's being released in the next build before I start getting slightly happy, and then I'll actually wait for the next build just to make sure it's actually there before it's properly exciting.
Well, you have 5 patches between the time that they introduce it and week 2.
Yeah.
So here we go. Conspiracy theories. I love them. So
it will be very good when it does come, though. Last build.
If I add 2 and 2 together and make 5 here, is the fact that the esports series doesn't look like it's really taking off and could possibly get dumped after 1 season, and the fact that the new cars are not available yet, is there a connection there?
It's possible. It's possible. I don't know. You'd think even they are running the esports series with the 8 events or whatever it is that they said. I would think that they would want the Mustang in that for sure, even if it was just a body change without a physics change. You'd think that they'd want to be promoting the most current versions of the car on TV.
Has it not been said that they're definitely doing the cars as opposed to when they're coming out? I was pretty sure somebody said they were definitely doing the Mustang and definitely doing the new Holden.
Well,
But when they were coming, I don't know. But if they're saying they're definitely doing it, then surely that's the large cost to get permission to do them is very early stages of that, and therefore it must be coming at some point.
iRacing has never said that they're coming. Everyone else has said.
Well,
Everyone else has said. The people in the know have said, but iRacing has never announced it.
Yeah, they have strongly hinted though, haven't they? They got everybody excited about 8 weeks ago, and the forum, especially from the Aussies and New Zealanders, went absolutely mental for a week.
Well, I hope they do. And even if it is just the body change, I think the Ford drivers would welcome the Mustang body style, and
Chris will.
From the look, Chris will. Yeah,
I don't really like it, if I'm being perfectly honest.
I think it depends on the paint scheme. Some of the paint schemes look really, really good, and other ones look
looks ugly.
Yeah,
front looks good, back looks ugly.
I actually love the look of the Mustang, but the trouble is, whatever series you watch now, and I'm talking real racing, there is a Mustang in it.
Yeah, true enough. Well, that's Ford's direction, right? One passenger car, the Mustang, and I think Focus is going to stick around a little bit, and then everything else is the SUVs.
The main three series that I watch on TV is NASCAR, which has got a Mustang, the British GT, which has got a Mustang. I watch the V8s, which has got a Mustang. It's like Mustang taking over the world at the moment.
Yeah, well, I understand that the Camaro is going to be imported into Australia, so we may see some Camaros as well. Then we'll have a real Trans Am series.
That's the way it's headed. I have to tell you, I guess I'm the devil's advocate. I have nothing against Mustangs. My dad worked for Ford all his life and kind of grew up in a Ford family. But I have to tell you, just the Mustang right now with the Holden out there, no discount the competition of it, just doesn't look right in a sedan series to me. It's not truly a sedan car. If they bring the Camaro, like you said, Tony, then it's a more proper thing, in my opinion.
Okay, so I'm sure we'll have all the Mustang lovers sending us private messages now. The other thing we touched on there was the new damage model. Now, iRacing keep releasing little videos showing the new damage model. I get frustrated when you have a full-on smash into the barriers, drive back onto the track, and the car is fine. And then you have a little scrape with the wall around Bathurst, and you get a meatball, and your steering wheel is at 90 degrees. I'm looking forward to this, but Tony, I'll pick on you. You get a lot of damage on your car. Something that you're looking forward to? Going to be a big improvement?
Oh yeah, I'm really looking forward to the hood being up over top of the windshield.
I feel sorry for the VR guys with bits of NQR cars flying backwards through the grid.
Yeah, okay.
It could be a whole aftermarket for car parts here.
Yeah, well, we'll be signing and selling them on eBay. I think what is visually the damage model looks good. I just hope that they work on the collision boxes. And in our league with our cars, when you have two of those cars rubbing together, there should be a significant amount of resistance, and we don't have that. So I'm really hoping that the collision box and the collision forces are worked on to make them more realistic, and I think it would be better racing for everyone.
And my other worry with the damage model, and I could be barking up the wrong tree. To me, it seems as if they are concentrating more on the visual aspects of damage rather than the physical aspects.
That's what it looks like to me as well. I don't think I kind of disagree with Tony on that. I think if you it's not right that you can have a small thing and get a lot of damage and a big thing and not get much damage. That's not ideal, and it does need to be sorted. But if do we really want people throwing cars at, get not being sure of what damage you're going to get discourages people being too aggressive, in my opinion. If somebody knows they're not going to get damaged, really, if they have light hits everywhere, you just get more contact everywhere, and that's not necessarily a great thing for online racing, in my opinion.
Well, it wouldn't be the Backfire podcast if you didn't disagree with Tony. So that's one thing. At least we got that out of the way. The other thing that we've had a big conversation about this a while ago on the NQR chat, rain. Now, my opinion is, everybody craves rain, but there is so many people that can't drive in the dry. And it's going to be a proper cluster if we get rain. Is it something that you guys would, do you look forward to wet races, or do you agree with me?
I look forward to them, but I believe that unless people are willing to invest a significant amount of time and practice into racing in the rain, that we're going to see some very strung out races.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's the unpredictability of rain is what I like, not so much the rain, if that makes any sense. It would be great if you're going through a race that starts dry and you're not quite sure what the weather's going to do, and then suddenly it rains 3 laps from the end, or suddenly it rains halfway through and then dries out again before the end of the race. But in a completely unpredictable way. It's that unpredictability that would make things great. It's not necessarily, if it's a wet race, it's not going to be that hard to adjust to it. I think it's just finding the pace of what the car does, and I'm not particularly looking forward to that. But it's I'm sure it'll be good, the same as everything iRacing does. But what I'm looking forward to by having rain is that unpredictability of when it rains and how much it rains and how wet it gets. And is it going to rain over the whole circuit, or with dynamic weather, is it going to rain over 2 corners and be dry over the next 6 corners? That could be fantastic if they get it right. So yeah, remains to be seen.
I think that's the golden question, and if they get it right, the worst thing is a wet and dry switch. As in, you can either have a wet race or a dry race, or during the race, if it rains, the track instantly goes from being bone dry to totally wet. Going back to when I used to race in R Factor 2, they had rain pretty much nailed, with rain tyres and dry lines appearing on the track and that sort of thing. So yeah, I hope that they, I'd rather it didn't come in for 2 years, but it came in right, rather than gets rushed in like other things do and just doesn't work properly.
Yeah, and to be fair, they're pretty good at that, iRacing. I'm pretty sure, but I think Tony would agree with me. It's like in real life, driving in the rain isn't difficult. Driving in the dry is not particularly difficult. But it's the unpredictability of it when you're not quite sure if it's wet or dry. That's the tricky thing about rain. I think Tony will agree. It's when it's just changing between the two and you don't know how much grip's there. When it's really wet, you know what the grip is. It's not particularly difficult. When it's dry, it's that in-between bit. And if they get that right, it'll be great.
Yeah, it'll be interesting in an endurance race, when you've got 90 minutes and you can actually see, after it rains, when it stops raining, the line drying out, and when people will switch over to dry tires and that sort of thing. But let's face it, they have to get the tire model right for a dry tire before they even think about doing a tire model for the wet.
Yeah, rain rain could be the great equalizer, though. Some people that may not be really quick can really kind of find their, what should I say, can find the groove when it starts raining. In real life, I've seen it happen, and I don't know though. Like Clyde said, there's, including myself, a lot of people can't drive that well on this to begin with. But rain's gonna be a different story. But it can make people shine that you don't think will.
Yeah, that is very true, and I hope they do it properly. So I'm sure we'll have plenty more discussions about rain, and then probably the first time we ever have a wet race, people will be screaming, "Don't ever do that again." So we'll see. Anyway, guys, as the time is getting on, let's move on to the questions now. Our new guy, who I've christened the Flying Finn, Marco Numella, has asked for setup secrets. Sorry, Marco, there isn't any. There is really. Yeah, watch the other podcast. We did talk about setups. We've had Chris Jackson talking about tyre pressures. Johnny and Tony have explained about different changes they make between qualifying and race and hot tracks and cold tracks, that sort of thing. So have a look back. Another question from Marco, and this is quite a good one. How much do you guys rely on data and feeling when setting up the car? My problem is how to set up the dampers. I'm an experienced GTE F3 with setups, but this car doesn't seem to react in any way with damper changes.
I completely agree with that statement. Tony will probably completely disagree.
Disagree, yeah.
Yeah. I'm all on feel, and then I'll let Tony talk to you about dampers. I'm all on feel, but that's it, and I don't rely on any data or anything. I'll let Tony explain the difficult stuff.
Yeah, it's funny, I have a couple of teammates that are pretty good at reading Motec, and they'll make some suggestions on dampers based on the Motec, and I'll go out and do a few laps, and through the seat of my ass, I would suggest a different damper setting, generally on rebound and compression in the rear, not so much on the front, but I think you can get a real feel for the rear of the car. So it may be a little bit of both. I know there's some guys that use Motec a lot and do well with it, but for me, it's seat of the pants.
Okay.
I struggle to feel changes. Just to add on to that, I struggle if I try various damper settings, and I struggle for them to feel any different whatsoever. And I just go on the lap times as I'm driving around, and what kind of feels more predictable in so much that the car either starts getting lively after a couple of laps or stays controllable after a couple of laps. That's as much as I could go on feel. It's very hard to feel any changes in the damper settings for me.
Another thing, Marco, is with this car, you're dealing with a spool rear end, and the cars you mentioned do not have those, and that changes totally the way, for example, throttle application and cornering and braking. It totally changes everything when you have that locked or spool rear end.
Yeah, and the other thing to mention as well, I can't remember if we did it last season before. Victor is very much into the dampers and what to change and that sort of thing. And we did have a group chat one night on Discord where Victor tried to explain to people what the different settings do.
Is he not due to come into one of these podcasts?
He certainly, yeah. I was just going to say he's on my list of asking people to come on. So we'll see if we can get Victor on sooner rather than later, just to give us a few hints and tips of what to do with the dampers. I know people that are new to the car, even experienced people with the car, there's so many different settings for the dampers, and learning what to change for what situation, perhaps we can come up with some sort of crib sheet after our chat with Victor, just so people have got some ideas on what they can change with the dampers and what to expect from those changes. So the next question is from Victor himself. How
Ignore
are you
his
guys
questions.
so damn fast? It's basically because they don't crash, Victor. That's it. How is Brandon too busy to race, but he's here for the broadcast? Is he talking from his boat?
I don't have a boat, and no, I went to France and got back last night, so it was too late to race, but managed to get here for the podcast. I left about an hour after the Daytona race, a 7-hour drive to France. So yeah, and I got back.
Okay, and final question at the moment is from Ryan Walker, who commentated on the Daytona race and has joined the series and hopes to be making his debut this coming Saturday at Phillip Island. And I think this is a fantastic question that all of us will have some input into. So what kind of advice would you give for new people giving the V8 a shot that are new to the car? Now, from my point of view, I will say that the first thing you need to do is learn to drive the car safely. Don't jump in the car and think you're going to be up the front racing with everybody unless you finish. Once you get the car control, and this hasn't happened with me, but hopefully with other people, the speed comes after that. That's basically the only advice I can give, but I'm sure there's plenty more from Johnny, Tony, and Bill.
I'd just say don't look for time on corner entries. Look for time on corner exit. That's probably the biggest difference with most cars. Most like GTEs, Formula cars, you're looking for time on corner entry. It's the last thing you want to do in this car. Look for it on the exits.
Yeah, anybody coming to this car needs to do laps. And if they don't do laps, they're never going to be successful. So I wouldn't be too concerned about setups, because at the end of the day, you can take two vastly different setups, put them in the hands of a good driver, and have them turn equal times. The baseline setup's pretty good. I would just adjust brake bias to your suiting and rear drive ratio to the track, and just do laps. And I'm not talking 10 laps. I'm not talking 15, 20. You need to do a lot of laps on every track just to get used to the car. And too many people want to arrive and drive, and that just doesn't work with this car. You have to put work into it. And if you do put some work into it, you'll get some self-satisfaction out of it.
Yeah, the work being the practice.
Yeah.
The laps. You haven't got to tinker with stuff. I mean, Foggy uses all the races so far, Foggy has used the baseline setup with some very slight changes. And I've used a setup that I've used at a previous track until I find one that I'm comfortable with around whatever track we're racing. And then it's just, again, I just make very, very slight changes.
Yeah, and Marco, I think,
and it's just laps. You tend to get, I'd make probably 2 temps by changing something on the car, and I'll gain at least a second to up to 2 seconds just by doing lap after lap after lap. From joining the session at the end of that session. Yeah, sorry, Tony.
Yeah, Marco used the setup that I provided for the league on the weekend and did very well with it. So, just goes to show that, and I think the week before, maybe you guys were using the setup I originally provided, right? Yeah. So, I try and put up a set every week that's going to be reasonably competitive. And as I've said many, many times, a setup may suit one driver and may not suit another, and no setup's ever perfect. So you do have to make some adjustments due to your driving style and your equipment, but those setups are generally pretty solid.
Yeah, and I also agree with that because Nico and I have not used the same setup all season. The other XVR guys use my setup, but Nickel prefers to do his own thing, and if I try Nickel's setup, I'm slightly slower, a couple of temps slower. If he tries mine, he's a couple of temps slower. So it's just driver preference.
Yeah, and something that Tony touched on there with brake bias. I know everybody wants to run as much rearward brake bias as they can,
Not always the
but
best thing.
I see so many people locking the back brakes up and the car spears off left or right. It's not always the way to go. And what I tend to do now is I will take the team recommended brake bias and usually add a couple of front. Get comfortable with it, but then what I'll do is I'll go into the hardest braking zone and then brake a little bit harder and see if the car spears off left or right, and then change the brake bias again. Because going into a hard braking zone with a car in front of you where you would normally brake, but the car in front of you brakes a little bit earlier or a little bit harder, so you have to, see so many accidents because of that.
I'm the last one to give advice, Ryan, but I have to tell you, with a lot of rear brake bias, especially with a spool or locked rear end, you'll find that normally it'll help the car turn. But if, like Clyde mentioned, if you come in there, hell's a popping on the brake pedal, you're going to spin out. And like Tony said, you got to put in a lot of laps. God knows I've been doing that for 3.5 years. Still don't have the feel for it, but unfortunately, I'm a charger into the corner, and that's the worst thing you can do with this car. It's almost like it's almost like you're walking on eggs. You got to be so careful with this car, but yet fast, and it's a unique combination. But once you find it, the proof's in the pudding. You see the guys up front, and it looks like they're driving this car effortlessly while we're sawing at the wheel and stepping on the go pedal and stepping on the brake pedal. But you got to be very careful and what should I say, exacting with this automobile.
Yeah, I think everybody knows it. It's it is a different car to the other things you might have driven, and slow in, fast out is the way to go. But you need to be precise as well. Minimize your steering movements, inputs, steady on the throttle. Brake application is so important in this car. I can remember doing a little one-on-one training session with Chris Jackson. I can't remember what track it was, but it was a long sweeping right-hander that you trail braked through, and Chris managed to change my thinking about braking for one corner, and once I got it set in my head, I gained half a second a lap. It was that important to me. I can't do it at every track, but it is one of the important things in the car. But as the guys have said, and I'm probably, Tony will back me up on this, the world's worst practicer. Real life always seems to get in the way of my practice. But when I do get weeks where I can get lots of practice in, come race day, I'm a lot more comfortable in the car. I take a few more risks than I would if I just do an arrive and drive, and normally get some. I'm a mid packer at best, but I can get right up there in the mid pack and bang in on the top 10 if I've got enough practice in during the week, which just doesn't happen very often. So yeah, laps, and more laps.
I think the big thing with this car for a new guy is that it's very easy to make mistakes because things are complicated. So consistency is everything. If you can forget your pace, if you can get rid of mistakes, the pace will come and you'll do very well. It's probably the best advice.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that, because a mistake and off track will cost you 2 or 3 seconds, sometimes more, if you get damage or something. So if you're going half a second a lap slower, you'll end up with a shorter race time at the end of the race. So, yeah, it's, take it easy to start with, and learn to drive the car, and then hopefully the speed comes after that.
Ryan, one more thing you ought to try is get on. The one nice thing about iRacing is get on board with some of these guys. Get on board with Johnny or Tony or Chris Jackson and just ride around the track with them. And I have to tell you, it doesn't even look like they're working. It's just amazing. I mean, the first time I rode with like Tony, I said to myself, how is he going so fast? It looks like he's on a cool off lap or something. But see, he and Johnny and those guys just don't make many mistakes. And, they have fast apex speed and fast exit speed, which doesn't really show while you're riding along with them. But that's what makes the difference. And they don't make many mistakes, where us guys in the back do.
Yeah, and ask for help as well. I'm biased because I'm part of running the league, but I've lost count of the amount of times I've been told this is the friendliest league that Joe Bloggs has ever driven in. The fast guys, share setups. The fast guys share advice. The fast guys will take time out of their schedules to help you out. There's no big secrets in this league. If somebody needs help, then the help is there for them. You just have to ask for it. That's probably the biggest bit of advice I can give anybody new to the league. Give it time. Don't just do 3 laps, 3 corners, bin the car and go, this is shit, it's broken. Just keep at it, and it'll come, most definitely.
For sure, you gotta. I have a nerve saying this because I'm guilty of it, but just bury your ego and don't be afraid to ask the guys, because if they can help you, they will.
Okay, so our final question of the night, which is a little bit irrelevant, from Marco again, was who was the driver of the day yesterday? Now, the podcast is based around the main series, so we sometimes mention things that go on in the sprint series, but normally, if Johnny wasn't away maggot drowning and Sam wasn't away crashing his whatever it was he was driving, some horrible green and white thing, this podcast would have happened last Sunday, so the sprint race wouldn't even have taken place. But just to make you feel better, Marco, you would have been my driver of the day yesterday, because you had 3 fantastic results in a series and a car that you're not used to. However, and there's always a however with me, I did say in the broadcast that I will reserve judgment until I've seen you race at Phillip Island on Saturday with a bigger grid and faster drivers and more traffic and everything else that comes in. For yesterday, yes, well done. I hope you do it again next Saturday, because some of these drivers at the top, we've got some bloody quick drivers in this series. Probably the best that Europe has to offer in the V8s. And it's always nice when somebody new comes in and can challenge those guys, and they're not getting everything their own way. So, yeah, let's hope you can do it again on Saturday. So, guys, we've
Looking
got...
forward to that. I'll second that, by the way. Yeah. The more people up there, the better.
The way I look at it is the more people up there, the more accidents you guys are going to have, and the more places I'm going to get.
Here, Clyde. I agree with that.
So we've got no more questions. Last little bit before we wrap up, guys, and I'll go around the room and start with Johnny. Anything you need to bring up, discuss before we close?
Now, did I tell you how big the fish was? I caught. No, I'm all good. Obviously need to get my head down, get some practice going for next week. By the sound of it, yeah, looking forward to it.
Tony, same question to you.
Yeah, looking forward to a big grid again next week. If we can get 30 cars out, I think that'd be great. It'll be interesting to see, obviously. And I'm going to make a prediction that a low 29 or a high 28 is going to be pole next week.
Ooh, that's interesting. Bill, your final thoughts?
Well, first of all, I wanted to let you know, Tony, that a high 28 is more than a second quicker than the real V8 supercar record at Phillip Island. That would be amazing. And as far as Johnny, the biggest fish you probably caught was from a fish market, but maybe not. I might be wrong. But anyway, it was a pleasure being on with you guys, and Tales from the Rear.
I used to like you, Bill.
Tales from the Rear of the Field was kind of fun, and enjoyed it.
Yeah, and incidentally, the V8 ESC lap record is held by Tony with a 1:29.766. So be interesting to see if the weather conditions allow
that doesn't
somebody to
include
go
quali
quicker.
though, does it?
That doesn't. That's race laps.
They're 1:29.7. So okay.
Full fuel, I think, for that too.
Oh, obviously.
And flat tires.
And I think last night, just getting the result up now, oh yes, it was Tony. It was Tony's 766 last night that
29.766.
Yeah, took our lap record.
And so the races are what, morning and afternoon, or
morning and late afternoon. And interestingly, last night we had we started at sunrise. So the first race was an hour later, and it was 64 degrees. We then had an afternoon race, and the track jumped up to 104 Fahrenheit. And then the sunset race, it dropped back down to 60. So that morning race was most definitely the quickest one.
60? I didn't think you could go below 65.
60 Fahrenheit, that was.
Track temperature was 65.
Yeah, it started at 64 and then went down, obviously, as the light faded because we finished in darkness. So we'll see if somebody can beat it.
And what was the most exciting race to watch? The one that was hot. We had 4 or 5 cars there that were really going.
Yeah, to be fair, I think I prefer the hot races, but they're all good.
Okay, guys. Well, we're getting better. Hour and 36 minutes. So we'll wrap it up now. Personally, I'd like to thank Racetech, obviously, for being our main sponsor. Johnny, Tony, and Sam, my usual compadres for the podcast, and obviously to Mr. Bill Switzer for jumping on and being our guest driver. Yeah, that's it for another week. We will be back, hopefully, next Sunday after the main series has been to Phillip Island. We should be back on track again on our usual Sunday slot after the race. And we will see if we can get Victor on as soon as possible to talk about the dark art of dampers. So I'll let the guys say good night to everybody.
Night.
Good night. And if anybody does want to see any pictures or hear about my fishing trip, I'll be more than happy to talk about it. Just give me a message. See you next time.
Cheers, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, people. Well, that's a wrap from us. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you all on track at a sunny Phillip Island on Saturday. Good night, all.